mitzvah. So again, we're on Lamed Vav on base. We're on 36b by the Mishnah. Whoever is chayiv because of a shvus. Now, anything that the rabbi ordained that's going to be not permissible on Shabbos or Yom Tiv, and there's no real source in the Torah for it, that's called a shvus. So any shvus, mishum rishus, or because of a rishus. Now, a rishus is something which sort of is hinted, it has its basis in the Torah. It's not a 100% full mitzvah, and the Gemara will give us cases, of course, rather than the Mishnah will. And mishum mitzvah, or something which is forbidden to do because of a mitzvah. B'Shabbos chayav b'Yom Tiv. If you cannot do it on Shabbos, then you also cannot do it on Yom Tiv. So the author of this Mishnah is stating that all the halachas pertaining to Yom Tiv also apply to Shabbos and vice versa. And there's really no difference between the two, besides we'll see for Eichel Nefesh, for food needed preparation. But other than that, it's all equal. And these are the ones that are an issue because of a shvus. Now, shvus was the total rabbinic decrees. One is one cannot climb a tree. And one cannot ride an animal. And one should not swim on water. And one should not clap. One should not hit their thighs. And one should not dance. So all these halachas are pure rabbinic in nature. And one is not supposed to head and do it on Yom Tiv nor on Shabbos. And these are the items that are forbidden because of rishus. One cannot go ahead and judge on Yom Tiv, on Shabbos Yom Tiv. One cannot go get married. One cannot do chalitza. Chalitza is when you have a husband dies and there are no children. The husband's brother is now supposed to marry the widow. Now, either you could go ahead and not marry, and that would you do the chalitza process with the shoe, or you can marry, and you're not supposed to do that as well. And these are the items which are forbidden because of a mitzvah. You're not allowed to sanctify items to the Beis Hamikdash. One is not allowed to go ahead and say, I'm going to give my worth to the Beis Hamikdash. And you're not supposed to either send your possessions to the Bedek Abayis, to also send your possessions to be part of the Beis Hamikdash. You're not allowed to take off Trumas and Maisris. These are all forbidden on Yom Tiv. And also, if it's forbidden on Yom Tiv, which is if one goes ahead and transgresses a halacha on Yom Tiv, it's far less severe of a punishment than on Shabbos. So if it's forbidden on Yom Tiv, for sure it's going to be forbidden on Shabbos. Now, ein bein Yom Tiv to Shabbos. There's no difference between Yom Tiv and Shabbos, ela oichel nefesh b'vat. Besides for oichel nefesh. So according to the author, all these items are forbidden. And they're all forbidden. And they're forbidden on Yom Tiv, also Shabbos. Yeah, no, fine. We're on 36b by the Gemara on bottom. I don't know, 7 lines up. So we just went to the Mishnah, and the Mishnah just clearly tells us that all the halachas, many different halachas which are forbidden, some are rabbinic, some are going to be sourced in the Torah, and some are fully in the Torah.
I can't believe you started without me.
I know.
The start time is supposed to be 6:10.
No, 5:45.
5:45? Oh, it's rather...
We're
all late.
I know.
Okay.
What are we going to do?
Find him.
So we go ahead, and so now we have a full house. We're on Lamed Vav on days. We're on 36b. We just finished the Mishnah. The Mishnah just briefly says that anything which is forbidden on Yom Tov, which is rabbinic in nature, a rabbinic decree, or it's source of the Torah, or it's an actual halacha in the Torah, if it's forbidden on Yom Tov, it's forbidden on Shabbos. And the only difference between Yom Tov and Shabbos is Eichel Nefesh, is food is the need to eat food, and that's permitted on Yom Tov and on Shabbos. Okay, so again, we're on Lamed Vav Amud Beis. We're on 36b, and we're by the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Lo Olen Bi'ilan Gzeir Shema Yitlish. Now one of the first halach we had in the Mishnah was one is not allowed to climb a tree on Yom Tov, and we said you're also not allowed to climb a tree on Shabbos. Now, why is it that the rabbis decreed, and this fell under the Shvus category, the decree category, the full rabbinic decree? So why did the rabbis decree that one cannot climb a tree on Yom Tov or Shabbos? The answer is because you might go ahead and as you're climbing, you might rip off a branch. Therefore, it's forbidden. And the next case the Mishnah brought down, one is not permitted to ride on an animal on Shabbos. Now, why is that forbidden? That's because we're afraid you might go outside the Tchum. The Tchum was 2,000 feet. The Tchum is the 2,000 feet between that one is not allowed to walk out from their one is not allowed to walk out from their Tchum. Now, meaning if I reside in a city, I'm not going to go 2,000 feet beyond the city walls. So, if I'm on a behema, if I'm riding an animal, I might easily miss the sign that says, watch out, do not pass this point because you're going to go past the Tchum. Therefore, the rabbi said you're not allowed to ride an animal. On that we say, Shema mina Tchum and da'araisa. We see from if this is so, if the rabbis are making a decree, you can't ride an animal because you might exit the Tchum, then we see a Tchum is midaraisa. The Tchum is something which is daraisa, which is biblical. It's a biblical commandment. Because if it's a rabbinic decree, we never make a decree for a decree, right? So if the whole Tchum is dirabanan, it's the whole idea of the 2,000, you can't go past the 2,000 cubic feet from your place of residence on Shabbos, is dirabanan, it's rabbinic. The rabbis would never make a decree that one can't ride on an animal in order to protect the decree. We only make decrees in order to protect a biblical commandment. Therefore, it must be, if we're making a decree, you can't ride on an animal because you might go past Tchum, must be the Tchum, the 2,000 cubic feet law is going to be daraisa. It's biblical. But the problem is, we know it's not. So how are we going to answer the question? So it cannot be that the reason you can't ride an animal is because you might come, because the rabbis fear that you go past the 2,000 cubic feet, because at that point, we know it's not daraisa. No, the answer has nothing to do with the 2,000 feet, the 2,000 cubic feet. Rather, the answer is that we're afraid as you're riding an animal, you're going to rip off a branch to guide it or to hit it. Therefore, you cannot go ahead and ride an animal. Very similar to the problem with climbing the tree. Now, the last one we said in the Shavus category, the last one we mentioned that is for one, just example, right? The example the Mishnah brought that is a rabbinic decree on Shabbos, on Yom Tov, will also be applied to Shabbos, is shutdown al pnei hamayim. One is not allowed to go ahead and swim in the water. The answer is what? No, why not? Now, we're afraid you're going to go ahead and create a floating device, which is taking some barrels and putting them together and putting whatever the process back then was to make some type of a flotation device in order to learn how to swim. But we're afraid you're going to create something on Yom Tov, therefore it's forbidden as well on Shabbos. Okay, so that took care. No, hold on, that did not. Now we continue. The Mishnah continued. The more examples of a shvus, more examples of pure rabbinic decrees, and one was le'metapchen, you cannot clap, le'misapken, le'merakin, you can't dance, you can't clap, you can't hit your thighs. Now the answer is as follows: Gzeir shem yisaken klisher. The reason one's not allowed to do that is because we're afraid that the clapping and dancing is going to bring you to play music, and the issue with playing music is the problem of you might come to fix a musical instrument. Okay. Now we previously saw a Tosfos about last week that said that at least according to Tosfos, nowadays it's not applicable because really no one is an expert in fixing instruments, and we have never nowadays no one ends up jumping from dancing to fixing instruments. But still, there are various different halachas levels of what people hold practically today, what to do about dancing on it. Okay, now the Elohim Mishum Rishus. Now we jump to the next level. The Rishus was it was a mitzvah. It's a commandment based in the Torah, in the Bible, and biblically. However, we weren't 100% sure if we're actually, but we didn't really have a source for it. We had, it's not a mitzvah gedolah. It wasn't an outright commandment. However, it definitely got its feet wet within the Torah. There's definitely sources in the Torah, reasons in the Torah, but the reasons why it's not a full-fledged mitzvah. Now, the one example was you can't hold court. A judge can't go ahead and hold court on Yom Tov. Now, we do say that. Now, Gemara asks, "Mitzvah kavit," but that's a full mitzvah. That he's doing a full mitzvah. So why is it called a rishus? If the rabbis forbade it, but at least when one goes ahead and holds court, he's doing a full commandment. He's fulfilling the he's fulfilling the biblical commandment that one's supposed to go out and judge. So therefore, if he has the ability to judge, one has to judge. So why is that not under the mitzvah category that the rabbis banned? Answer is like we're talking about a case when there was someone better than him. There was a judge, there was someone in town that was a better judge than him. There was someone that was more capable than him. At that point, really it's not incumbent upon you to sit and judge if there's someone else that could do a better job. For whatever the reason, the person passed, so it fell upon him. So therefore, it's not what. And so in a case, it wasn't a full mitzvah because he had what to fall back on and say, I don't want to do it. I'm letting the greater sage do it. For the reason he did it, therefore, it wasn't a full mitzvah. But still, in the case, and still, it's forbidden as the rabbi's decree is forbidden. Now, voy makdishin, we said you're not allowed to get married. You're not allowed to wed a wife. So now we say a mitzvah kavid, but that's for sure a mitzvah. The Torah says pruvu. The Torah says it's a mitzvah to go ahead and get married, and in order to grow Klal Yisrael. So like tzricha, we say no. This like isha obanim. We said no. We already, and we learned to the top. So we turn to the top of Lam Zayin on Aleph to 37a. It's the Isha Banim. You already fulfilled the mitzvah of Puruvu. You already fulfilled the mitzvah that one is supposed to have children. And as Rashi explained, either you had two males, according to Beishamai, or how we paskin, we follow one needs a male and a female offspring in order to actually fulfill the mitzvah. So we actually fulfilled the mitzvah. Now there's still a mitzvah to continue bearing children. Rashi brings out another source. So therefore, but the main mitzvah already was fulfilled. Therefore, it's called a rishus, which is it's a mitzvah. It's not a full mitzvah. It's a semi mitzvah, and that's what the Mishnah put this under the category and said that this is not a full mitzvah. It's a rabbinic decree which was banning this semi mitzvah because you already fulfilled the mitzvah of puruvu. We're on the top of. Someone just joined. So we're on the top of 37a, with Lam Zayin Amud Aleph, and we are on in fact, we're by the two dots on the first line. So the Mishnah continues. With the Mishnah said one cannot do chalitza on Yom Tov, and one cannot be miyavim. Now chalitza was when there's a husband, a man died, left over a wife. The wife there were no children from this marriage, or the husband had no children altogether. And the brothers of the husband are required to marry the wife in order to bring up children in the name of the dead husband. Now, if we don't want that to take place. It's something called chalitza. There's a ceremony in order to. Now, the halach is really at this point that the oldest brother is actually already halachically wed, sort of automatically halachically connected, had in a relationship already with the widow. Now, however, if you want to, like giving a get, the same idea. If you want to sever that connection, you have to do a chalitza ceremony, and that's forbidden. In order to marry her to be and finish off the process. Now we say a mitzvah kavit. What do you mean? Why are we not calling that a full mitzvah and just calling it a semi mitzvah? That's a full mitzvah. The Torah says you have to do chalitza or yibum. You don't have a choice. So we say leitzricha d'ika gadol. No, we say no. That there was an older brother. And whatever the reason is, the older brother passed, and now it's on one of the younger brothers to do it. So technically, the full mitzvah is on the older brother. The younger brother is willing to step up to the plate and do chalitza, good for him, but really it's not on him. Therefore, it's a semi-mitzvah, not a full mitzvah. Now we say, mitzvah gadol yadim, and the full mitzvah, the real Torah commandment, is on the oldest brother. And then we say, now we have a good question. Everything that we just mentioned, we say v'kulo tamamai gazru. At least on the going to court, not daning, not holding judgment, marrying, chalitza and yibum. What is the reason the rabbi's decree that's forbidden? That is for what is the reason behind the decree to say that's forbidden to do in Yom Tov? Now we answer Shemay Yichtoi. You might come and write. When it comes to the court, you're gonna write up the final judgment. When it comes to the marriage, you have to write a marriage contract. When it comes to the chalitza and the yibum, you have to write a contract stating that either chalitza was done or a full marriage took place. So therefore, because of you might come to write, the rabbi is decreed you shouldn't do any of it. Now we're up to the full-fledged mitzvah that the rabbis say you shouldn't do it. In order to do it, these are the things you shouldn't do, which are a full mitzvah, a full biblical commandment. The rabbi said don't do it on Yom Tov. You shouldn't sanctify any items to the Beis Hamikdash. You shouldn't give yourself worth. You say, the person says that it's on him to give his full worth to the Beis Hamikdash, and the Torah says exact values per person. You can't go ahead and sanctify items to the Bedek Habayis in order to beautify and strengthen the Beis Hamikdash itself. Now we say these are all forbidden. Now why are they all forbidden? The answer is that it's a decree because all these items look like you're engaging in a business transaction. Now Rashi gives two reasons what this issue of a business sale is. One is that since at the end of the day, the one understanding is that it's leaving your domain and it's going into the domain of the Beis Hamikdash, so that is a business transaction. It's going from one person to another person. Therefore, it looks like a problem. Now, there's another. The second issue, according to Rashi, could be not that, but rather we're afraid you're going to come to right. Since I'm actually donating an item to the Beis Hamikdash, or I'm giving myself worth to the Beis Hamikdash, I might go ahead and write it out in order that I remember, in order to state that this item was given to the Beis Hamikdash. Therefore, we don't want you to go ahead and come to that issue. Therefore, we cut it off early and say you can't go ahead and sanctify anything in the Beis Hamikdash. Now, the last one that the Mishnah mentioned was Trumas HaMaisros. Lo Magbin Trumas HaMaisros. We're 7 lines down from Lam Zayin Amar Aleph from 37a by the 2 dots in the middle. So we said, I'll go ahead and take off Trumas HaMaisros. Pshita. Gemara says, of course, that's obvious. Now, the reason why it's obvious, there's no Rashi here, but the reason is because it's a tikkun. If you have food in front of you, and the food in front of you is unedible because you didn't take off the Trumas HaMaisros, and it's forbidden, of course, to eat food without tithing or without taking off, giving to the Levite or giving to the priest, to the Kohen. So there's a tikkun. You're fixing it. You, by taking off that 10%, or you by taking off the 1/60th or whatever, 1/50th, you're fixing the food, you're making it edible. So you're not allowed to fix things on Yom Tov. So that's obvious. So why is the Mishnah even mentioning it? So we say, Tana Rabbi Yosef. So Rabbi Yosef explains, that no, we're talking about a case that you're giving it to the Kohen on that day. Now, if you give to the Kohen on the day of Yom Tov itself, that perhaps one's going to say that he's not giving it to the Kohen because he owes Trumas HaMaisros. He's giving it to the Kohen because it's Yom Tov, and he wants a Kohen to be Mesamech. He wants a Kohen to rejoice on the holiday. Therefore, he's being nice, and he's giving him a present. He's giving him a large amount of food. Therefore, I could translate the situation differently. Some may think, since I could look at it differently, it will perhaps not have to fall under the category and be banned. Because, as we always had, that if you're able, a lot of times when it comes to Yom Tov, if you're able to translate it in that something else is taking place, it's going to be permitted. Therefore, we still say, no, it's going to be forbidden. Therefore, the Mishnah brought this in to think, because I might think that you give Trumas HaMaisros, because perhaps I can make it look like I'm giving a present. I'm not giving Trumas HaMaisros to the Levi or to the Kohen. I would say, no, it's still going to be forbidden. Now, on that we say, based on rules that we learned previously, the only food which I'm not allowed to give, remember, the whole issue is a tikkun, is that I'm fixing it. As everything else that we know, that you're allowed to, anything which lets you go ahead and eat food, anything oichol nefesh is permitted to do on Yom Tov. So, now, things which are, another rule that we know about oichol nefesh, about the halacha on Yom Tov that permits you to prepare food. So if I could have done it Erev Yom Tov, I could have done it before Yom Tov, before the holiday. You're not supposed to do it on the holiday itself, right? So therefore, with that in mind, the Gemara says, what did the rabbis forbade? They forbade food which you could have given yesterday. You could have separated yesterday. But food which yesterday I couldn't take off, I only could take off today. Now, what is such food? Because usually, if you think about it, let's say you have a whole bunch of apples, right? That was obviously here yesterday because you're not allowed to pick apples on Yom Tov anyway. So therefore, it must have been here yesterday. Most produce was here sitting in your house before Yom Tov. So as a penalty, you can't take it on Yom Tov. You only could do it. It's not going to. Therefore, if you could have done it yesterday, you're not allowed to do it on Yom Tov itself. That includes most food, unless you go in Isa, like dough. Dough you create on Yom Tov because you don't want to bake fresh bread on Yom Tov. You got to go ahead and create the dough on Yom Tov. And challah, which is the part of the dough we take off and give to the kohen, that is permitted to do on Yom Tov. Because I couldn't do that yesterday anyway. So in that case, in a case when I couldn't have done it yesterday, like in a case of dough, because dough was only created on Yom Tov, then the halacha of oichel nefesh, the halacha of the right to go ahead and prepare food on Yom Tov, overrides this rabbinic decree, and I'll give Trumas HaMaisros to the kohen, and it'll be permitted to go ahead and give it. Now, we say, Hani mishum rishus. Now we're going back. We're saying, we mentioned a few halachas that we said we're not a full mitzvah, it was a semi-mitzvah. An example we gave was a judge, in a case when there was a greater judge, or a yibum, when in the case when there was an older brother, or getting married in the case when the man already had children. We say and we say you're saying you're calling that a semi mitzvah, and there's no issue because of shvus. There's no issue because of a rabbinic decree. The whole thing is a rabbinic decree. You have to call it a shvus. The reason you can't get married is because the rabbis decreed you can't do it. That is the best. That is the prime example of a shvus. Hanimishum mitzvah. An example in the examples we gave, which we said were full mitzvahs, like we said, sanctifying items to the Beis HaMikdash, giving your word to the Beis HaMikdash. That's called a full mitzvah. And you're saying that when the Mishnah said it's a mitzvah, it sounds like it's la'afuke. It's coming to exclude that it's not a rabbinic decree. It's fully only biblical. And I'm saying, what do you mean it's not rabbinic? The whole decree is rabbinic. So how can you say that's because it's a mitzvah and nothing to do with the rishus? What was the question? Yeah, the rabbis are the ones who said this is forbidden. How could you say that this is a biblical issue and nothing to do with the rabbinic decree? Of course, it's a rabbinic decree. The rabbis forbade it. And now we say, no. The answer is, of course, you're right. Of course, when we said mitzvah, it includes also the fact that the rabbis went ahead and made a decree against it. What we meant to say is that not only, and we say, of course, they're all going to be a shvus. Of course, they're all going to be based on rabbinic. But when we said that some are semi-mitzvahs and some are full mitzvahs, they're saying not only are they a rabbinic issue, they're also based on a full biblical commandment. For example, not only shvus gredasa da'aser, we're not only going to say that they're forbidden because of a shvus, because of a rabbinic decree, nami aser. And even a shvus, which is based on a semi-mitzvah, is going to be forbidden. And not only is it going to be not only is a shvus to rishus, which is a rabbinic decree on a semi-mitzvah, even a decree on a mitzvah is going to be aser, because each time I get to a higher plane of halachic ruling, I might think that the rabbis don't have the power to go ahead and declare, let's say, a full-fledged mitzvah, like getting married, or that was a semi-mitzvah, or actually sanctifying something which is a full mitzvah. I might think the rabbis will not make such a decree. They would hold back their decree just to the rabbinic level. Therefore, we say no, the rabbis made a decree on everything, and they didn't hold back, even though they were stopping a biblical mitzvah from taking place. Okay, now, so therefore we went through all the cases in the Mishnah, and now we're at the end of the last piece of the Mishnah. Kol elu b'yom tiv amru. We said that all these things which are forbidden, we said that they're forbidden on Yom Tiv and also on Shabbos. Now, and so we're going to ask a contradiction. Reminu, I'll ask you a question from the following brisa. The brisa says as follows: Mashilin derech aruba b'yom tiv, that one is permitted to lower his fruits from the roof on Yom Tiv. For example, if I put up my grapes on my roof to dry out, and then it started to rain, and it's going to ruin the grapes. I mean, they already started drying out, and now the rain's going to come and totally ruin my soon-to-be raisins. On Yom Tov, one's allowed to go ahead and lower the raisins from the roof, straight down into his house. Avalei b'Shabbos, but it's forbidden on Shabbos. So we see a case, the Mishnah says everything which is forbidden on Yom Tov is forbidden on Shabbos, and I can assume vice versa as well. But here we have a case, it's permitted on Yom Tov. Not only that, the Mishnah says there is no difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov. Ein bein Yom Tov l'Shabbos. There is no difference between Yom Tov and Shabbos, and vice versa, besides for Eichel Nefesh, besides for food preparation. So in this case, it's not food preparation. You're saving your items from loss. It's chasaron. We call this a hefsed mamain. You're stopping from a loss of money. But the Mishnah says a loss of money is no more of an excuse on Yom Tov than on Shabbos. It's forbidden on Yom Tov. It's forbidden on Shabbos. Over here, we have an open brisa that clearly states that one could save his raisins on Shabbos, but not on Yom Tov. Sorry, on Yom Tov, not on Shabbos, right? So therefore, that's our question. So that's what we're going to focus on to the Mishnah, trying to answer this issue. Why is it that the Brisa says that there is a difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov, at least when it comes to Hefsed Mama, when it comes to saving monetary loss, and not the Mishnah? So I'm Rav Yosef. So it says Rav Yosef. Like Kasha, it's not a question. Ha Rebbe Lazar, ha Rebbe Yeshua. That one is going to be Rebbe Lazar, and one's going to be Rebbe Yeshua. So the Mishnah is either going to be Rebbe Lazar or Rebbe Yeshua. We'll see in the Mishnah which one it is. And the Brisa is a different author. Two different authors, no question. So one holds on, there is a difference on Yom Tov when it comes to saving money. And the other one says that there is no difference. Let's see who's who. The Tana we learn. If you have a animal, a mother and a child, let's say cow, walking down the road, and they both fall into a pit. Now, the overall, just to say, the halacha is one is not allowed to go ahead and slaughter a mother and his child on the same day. That Torah writes that is forbidden to slaughter on the same day. Now, what do you do? Now it's Yom Tiv, and it fell into the pit. And what do you do? Now, you want to get it out of there, but now we have a problem. Because once you pick up one, now you can pick up one and say, well, it's not muksa. On Shabbos, it would be forbidden to pick up. It's muksa, right? You're not allowed to touch the animal on Shabbos. Yom Tiv, you could say, I'm picking up to slaughter it, right? That's good. That's for the first one you pull out. But the second one, you can't say I'm slaughtering it because the first one was the mother of the child. And if you plan on slaughtering the mother of the child, that you're not allowed to slaughter the other one remaining in the pit. So now it's muksa. So how are you going to take it out? So that's the question. So you could pick up the first one on condition to slaughter it, so therefore it's not a muksa issue because you plan on slaughtering it today on Yom Tiv, and then you have to slaughter it. And the second one, you got to leave it there. You can't pick it up because it's muksa. Because the reason why it's muksa is if you're slaughtering the first one, the mother, or we say you're not allowed to slaughter a mother and a child on the same day, so therefore, of an animal, you're not allowed to slaughter a animal, a mother and an animal child, right? So you're not allowed to slaughter a cow and a calf on the same day. So if you pulled one out to slaughter it, the other one's muksa, and you got to leave it there and support it. And it says you feed it, make sure it survives till after Yom Tov. Rabbi Shua says, you pick up the first one on condition to slaughter it, and then you say, no, I don't like it so much. And then you umarin, and you end up making a like not a joke, but you end up playing games, and you pick up the second one. So whichever one you want to slaughter. So according to Rabbi Yeshua, he lets you play a bit of a game and say, and you could reason, the first one I'm taking out because I want to slaughter it. Then you pick it up, you take out the mother, or whatever, let's say you take out the mother, the cow. Then you say, no, I want a young calf because I want fresher meat, whatever. So therefore, then you take up and say, no, I'm going to change my mind and pick up the calf. Now you have both of them out, and now you can decide which one you're slaughtering. That's called harama. That's called playing games. Now, that's not literally what harama means, but pretty much that's what it means. So that's machlekes. So we have both fall into the pit. So according to Rabbi Lazar, I'm not allowed to save the second one because of a hefsed money, because of a loss of money. According to Rabbi Shua, though, Rabbi Shua says you are allowed to because of a loss of money, because if you leave the second one in the pit, it might die on Yom Tiv. Therefore, I'm allowed to go ahead and pick it up and remove it on Yom Tiv in order to save the money. So now we have a good answer. Our Mishnah said there's no difference between Shabbos and Yom Tiv, even when it came to a loss of money. That's Rabbi Lazar. The Beitza that we mentioned before that said that one is permitted to lower the raisins if it's going to rain into the house in order to save it. So on Yom Tov, not Shabbos, that's according to Rabbi Shua holds. There is the idea of hefsed mamay, of saving them. You're allowed to do things in order to save yourself from monetary loss on Yom Tov. So we found that answer. Our Mishnah is Rabbi Lazar, and the Beitza is Rabbi Shua, and that would answer everything. But Abaya says no. Abaya, Mamai, who said this is a good answer? Who said Rabbi Shua and Lazar is going to agree? Rather, who said Rabbi Shua is going to agree to the case of lowering the raisins? That no, who said Rabbi Lazar is going to agree when it came to the raisins? Maybe Rabbi Lazar would say, in the case of the raisins, I'll agree you're allowed to lower it. Because in that case, if it starts raining, for whatever reason, I can't spread a tarp over it. It's going to ruin it. So therefore, I can lower it. But in the case of the animal that fell into the pit, who said the animal is going to die in the pit? Who said the second animal is going to die? Give it food, and it'll survive. Give it water and food, and just because it's in a confined area, nothing's really going to happen, unless it's bleeding or something. But we're assuming not. So therefore, it didn't get so hurt. So leave it there. And then who said it's going to die? But in the case of the lowering the raisins, then maybe not. Inami or ad, kind of like Rabbi Shua. Rabbi Shua only said that you're allowed to go ahead and take and deal and on Yom Tiv. Do something on Yom Tov which is forbidden in order to save money. That's because you can at least play some games. When someone looks at it, you could claim, yeah, the reason I picked up the second one is because I picked up the first one and then I changed my mind for the second one. But when it came to the raisins are muksa. These are unedible items, and you're afraid they're going to get ruined by the rain, and you're lowering them. You don't have an answer. So at the end of the day, we lost our answer. We cannot say that Rabbi Elazar is our Mishnah, and he would argue on the Brisa, and Rabbi Yeshua is the Brisa, and he would argue on the Mishnah. So we're back to square one. We have the Mishnah, and we have a Brisa. They seem to be contradicting each other, and we don't have who to pin it on to in order to claim that it's an argument between two authors. Rav Papa, like Kasha, Rav Papa gives another answer. Beishamai, our Mishnah is going to be Beishamai, Beisilo, and the Brisa is going to be Beisilo. The Tanan, because you learn Beishamai Imrim Ein Maitzin Lois Akatan Lois Alulab. On Shabbos, on Yom Tov, one is not allowed to take out one's not allowed to carry a child. One's not allowed to carry a lulav on Yom Tov. Later Sefer Torah, you're not allowed to carry a Sefer Torah l'Rishus Rabbim. So through the public domain, you're not allowed to carry a lulav according to Beis Shammai. You're not allowed to carry a child. You're not allowed to carry a Sefer Torah. Meaning, no carrying is allowed on Yom Tov. Beis Hillel Matir. We go like Beis Hillel, we say it's permitted. Now, it will end up being we could give the following answer that. Our Mishnah that says there's no difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov, that's going to be Beis Shammai who says there is no difference. But according to Beis Hillel, why according to Beis Hillel are you allowed to carry on Yom Tov? Because the idea of Mitaych. Since it's permitted to do it in order to get food, it's also permitted in order when you don't have to get food. That's the idea of Mitaych. Since. So therefore, he's going to say, since if it would be real food, I'm allowed to lower the raisins that would be real food through the skylight. So therefore, also when it's at this point, even when it's muksa, it's still permitted to go ahead and do it. So we found our answer. We have Beis Hillel is going to be the Brisa, and interestingly, our full Mishnah is going to be Beis Shammai. We say no, Dilma, and now we say no. Perhaps again, it's not going to work. Dilma loihi adkan like kamari Beis Shammai hasam ela haitza aval tutuli loy. We say no. Whoa. What's the issue when it came to lowering it through the skylight? So that the issue was muksa. So maybe Beis Shammai is going to say only when it came to carrying in a public domain, I was stringent. Carrying in public domain, that potentially is going to be a biblical commandment that you're transgressing. When it comes to tilto, when it comes to muksa, that's only rabbinic. So I don't care. So go ahead and even on Yom Tov, he'll agree. When it comes to loss of money, you can lower your soon-to-be raisins that are going to get your wet raisins or wet soon-to-be raisins, whatever they are, in order to save money. And don't come and tell me that we see Beis Hillel is stringent because he says that you're not allowed to carry on Yom Tov. Say no, because carrying on Yom Tov is a biblical issue, and lowering it to the skylight is going to be a rabbinic issue, which is only muksa. So therefore, you can't prove the difference. Even Beis Shammai might agree to this. So if you say Beis Shammai is the Mishnah, and Beis Shammai would agree to the Brisa, we're back to the original issue. Why is it that one is saying there is no difference, and the other, Mishnah seems to say there is no difference in Shabbos and Yom Tov, and the Brisa seems to say that there is a difference. And we say no, you can't give it you can't use that to differentiate between muksa and eitzah. Muksa and carrying are tied together. Why? The whole reasons why the rabbis made a decree, the idea of muksa, that whole book called muksa, which is very vast and definitely runs our life when it comes to Shabbos. The whole reason because they were afraid. The sages made a decree because we're afraid to take an item and carry into the public domain. Therefore, the rabbis restricted what you could touch on Yom Tov. So if Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to go ahead and carry in the Rishus Rabbim, anything in the Rishus Rabbim, in the public domain on Shabbos, for sure he would apply the mitzvah, the issue of muksa. Because if you're concerned about carrying, you're concerned about muksa. Therefore, we do revert back to it has to be that if Beis Shammai says you can't carry in the public domain, there's no difference in Shabbos and Yom Tov when it comes to carrying. He'll agree that there's no difference between muksa and Shabbos and Yom Tov. Therefore, he would not allow you to lower the raisins through the skylight if they're going to get ruined. However, therefore that Brisa is Beis Shammai. Our Mishnah is Beis Shammai. The Brisa is going to be Beis Hillel because Beis Shammai can't agree to it. The Mishnah is going to be Beis Shammai, and now we have our answer. The Mishnah that said there's no difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov, that's Beis Shammai. And the Brisa that seemed to say there are differences, especially when it comes to muksa and saving money, that is going to be Beis Hillel. So we found our final answer. Okay, now we're going to start the new Mishnah on 37a. Says the Mishnah, Habehema ba'kelim karaglei habayim, that the animal and the vessels are like the feet of the owner. Now, what does that mean? So I'm talking about Tchum Shabbos. Again, we spoke about Tchum Shabbos. Tchum Shabbos is the idea that where I set my residence on Yom Tov, or the beginning, on the sunset Friday night, or the sunset on the eve of a holiday, that at that point I cannot go beyond 2,000 cubic feet, 2,000 amos. For now, I'll just refer to as 2,000 amos. Now, the idea, that usually is that is where I reside. If I reside in a city, the entire city is my residence. Therefore, I can't go 2,000 amas beyond the city walls. If I'm sitting by myself in a desert or in a forest, secluded from anyone else, then literally it's 2,000 amas from exactly where I am on the onset of Shabbos and Yom Tov. So now that's for myself. And this halacha also applies to my animals and my vessels. If I have an animal, wherever I took my residence on the onset of Shabbos or Yom Tov, my animals also cannot go beyond that limit of 2,000 amas. Or I have my pots and pans, for example. If I want to lend out my pots and pans, I have a neighbor that comes to me, says, I need to borrow, a good example, if no one borrows pots and pans anymore, pretty much, a raincoat. Someone comes to me and says he has to borrow a raincoat. And if for whatever the reason is, that if you somehow were in a different city and you were able to make it back to your city, however it worked, on the onset of Yom Tov, then if you were in a different location than the person borrowing from you, your raincoat will be restricted to your 2,000 amas. And if that person somehow has a different 2,000 amas, he's got to make sure to keep it within your 2,000 amas, right? And the fact he's visiting you, obviously you have some overlapping area, but he has to make sure to know where your 2,000 amas is. Now, usually this is also applicable. We're all in the same city when you borrow something. However, there are times you could, especially when it comes to Eretz Yisrael, where there are different cities very close to each other, and you can walk from one to the other. You have to be a little more careful when it comes to this. Now, so therefore, that's the halacha. Your animals and your vessels and your clothing and your pots and pans, everything you own, are restricted to your 2,000 amas on Shabbos and Yom Tov. And now, hamaiser behemtoi livnoi. One hands over his animals to be watched by his son, or to a shepherd. Again, this is going to be like even if you hand them over to someone else on Yom Tov to watch it, since on the onset of Yom Tov, it was mine, in my possession, therefore it's going to be restricted to the owner's 2,000 amas. If there's something which is, there's some type of item which there's many brothers in one house, and one of the brothers sort of it's miyuchet to him that he always uses this item. Now, Shavisis Harei Elu Kiraglob. Now, one of the brothers want to borrow it from him. Again, the same thing is that since it's his, this item is going to be restricted and cannot be taken beyond the 2,000 amas of the brother that owns it. Now, but let's say he owns the entire house. Let's say everyone uses it. So all the brothers and all the family members are always sharing it. Then at that point, we enlarge the area to be. It could go anywhere where one of the brothers were at any one point. So it hold on, what was that? Sorry. It's gonna be. Yeah. Then it's gonna have. It's gonna have to be again. It's gonna be only can be used since they all own it. It only could be brought to an area where they're all allowed to be. So if one of them if one has a different set of 2,000 amas than the other, then you have to make sure that you're in the overlapping area. Now, let's say someone borrows a utensil from his friend, from before Yom Tov. Then whoever borrowed it, so I go to my neighbor and ask him for a measuring cup, and then when it comes into the onset of Yom Tov, it's in my house. I have possession of this measuring cup, even though he owns it, but since I borrowed it, it's going to be restricted. And then the owner wants to come back and borrow his measuring cup and walk beyond my 2,000 amas. It's forbidden, since I had possession of it on the onset of Yom Tov. Even though I just borrowed it, but he let me take it. He gave it to me to take, at least he let me borrow it. Therefore, it is under my domain. Therefore, it's within my 2,000 Yom Tov. But if I go to my neighbor and it was hit and I borrowed it on Yom Tov, Yom Tov, then it's according to his, because on the onset of Yom Tov, it was in his possession. Therefore, it goes by the 2,000 amas. His 2,000 amas, not mine. So someone goes to her friend and she borrows different ingredients for her dough. Then again, it's going to be restricted to both of them, because we're not saying she took everything from the neighbor, but at the onset of Yom Tov, so on Yom Tov, she borrowed some of the items to make challah, and then she put the rest of the items for challah. So therefore, we have a mix in front of us. Some items belong to woman A, some items belong to woman B in this challah. So and since on the onset of Yom Tov she didn't borrow yet, so if she borrows flour on Yom Tov itself, so the flour And then she mixes into a challah, so she has her challah mixed in with her neighbor's flour. So therefore, it's a mixture. Therefore, it's going to be restricted to the both. It has to be within both neighbors' domain. So again, if she said her domain, she said where she wants to be a little further north, and she said where it's a little further south, and they only overlap within 1,000 amis, then this challah cannot go beyond either border of the 1,000 amis.
So this would apply in farming communities, basically.
It would be. So if you have a neighbor which he isn't, so if you have, so we usually understand that the houses, as long as it's within 70 amis, 70 cubic feet from each other, the tchum does not start yet. So in a farm community where everyone is further out, then yes, if someone walks 1,000 amis to his neighbor in order to borrow something on Shabbos itself, then he could only take it. Let's say he goes 1,000 miles, 1,000 amis north to his neighbor. So and he borrows something on Yom Tiv, he could only walk back. He could take it 1,000 amis back to his south, back to his house, plus another 1,000 south. But technically, he's allowed to go 2,000 amis south from his house. But the item can only go 1,000 amis from the house because that's restricted by his neighbor, which is 1,000 north, right?
So if it was borrowed before Yom Tov for Shabbos,
then it goes by whoever actually is in possession of it. Yehuda Paiter b'mayim b'fnei she'ein b'hem mamish. However, Rabbi Yehuda says if you borrow just water with the whole challah business, so all I'm missing is water. I go to my neighbor and I borrow water from her to make challah on Yom Tiv. Then we say the water is not going to do anything and it's fully yours because water in by mamish you can't see. It's any nicker. It's not significant and you can't even see it. You can't see if there's water in this item or not. So therefore, that would not be included. But flour and spices will. Okay, we will stop over there.
thank you.